like to talk to you.
Why?
Thank you, thank you, thank you. It is Friday. Finally Friday. Don't know about you, but I am glad that we have reached this part of the week. Get in that chat. There's Kevin11. Omega Lazarus is there, as is Malone, and a whole bunch of other cool kids. Oh. Finally, Friday is being brought to you this week by Major Spoilers VIP and Patreon members from around the world. You can show your support, and you can get a bunch of free stuff, or bonus stuff. I shouldn't say free stuff. Bonus stuff. When you point your browser to patreon.com/majorspoilers. Well, I guess there's a bunch of free stuff over there, too. So, yeah, patreon.com/majorspoilers. That's where you need to go. Happy Friday to every single one of you. Whether you're watching live or you're watching on the replay. I'm really behind on a lot of stuff, especially those replays. I get them up, and they get scheduled, and they go up on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/majorspoilers. But then I never put them on the majorspoilers.com website. Bad, Stephen. Bad. If you would, follow the instructions right there from Kevin11. Check out the Discord channel, where a lot of other conversations are going on. Critical Hit conversations, Finally Friday conversations, Top 5 conversations. Conversations about cats. Too many cat gifs. If you are a cat gif fan, you want to go hang out in the general room. Those guys are a little weird. Most of them are right here watching live, but yeah. I'll post my cat pics. I'll post my tortoise pics too, occasionally. So get over there at the Discord, the Major Spoilers Discord. And if you are a patron at patreon.com/majorspoilers, you have access to little bonus channels, little bonus rooms, where you can talk about things that only we talk to our patrons about. So there you go. Also, if you're an Amazon Prime member, I guess I'm going to get all this stuff up out of the way. Kevin11 also has a tip up there on how you can use your Amazon Prime account and connect it to your Twitch subscription, so that you're making Jeff Bezos give us money month after month and day after day. Little by little, ladies and gentlemen. I'm kind of in a mixed sorts this week. Because on the one hand, I'm super, super excited about one thing and really, really happy about one thing. I'm super, super frustrated about something else. I'll tell you about that in just a moment. Oh, you like that? Super, super frustrated about something else. So what am I excited about? Well, gosh darn it, I am excited about that Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse announcement that came out, last week? It's been a while. It's been over a week now, and I'm still like, oh my God, we're going to get another Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, which we pretty much knew was happening, right? So, that's... who was it? It was, Drew McWeeny, I believe, was on Twitter this last week. And it's all part of this whole Martin Scorsese versus the Marvel Universe, film versus movie. And I've already shared my thoughts on it. You're right. I agree. Marvel movies are not cinema. They are not film. Marvel movies are movies. They are meant to be consumed and enjoyed by lots and lots of people. But Drew McWeeny, on Twitter, I believe it was him. If it wasn't, it was the other one. But he went on to talk about how today, movies are all part of a larger program or idea of sequels and expansions and trilogies. Today, most movies are not made unless there is a surefire way to get 3 movies out of the deal. Now, obviously, if the first movie tanks, then they don't have to proceed with the other 2. But, when the next round of Star Wars movies was announced, it was 3 movies. When we had... I'm sure when they were only thinking about the Iron Man movies, they were really only thinking about 3 Iron Man movies, and then they had to expand it to everything else. Look at Die Hard. Look at Ocean's 11. Look at, pretty much any movie right now is being looked at through the lens of franchises. And McMeany was going, can you think of any other time in history, or can you think of a time in history where the studios were saying, let's figure out if we can make this one movie work and see if it does well, and how can we market this one movie instead of pitch it as a series of movies. And sure enough, the time that studios took chances on strange movies like Taxi Driver, like Apocalypse Now, was the time when Martin Scorsese and Kubrick and Spielberg and Lucas, all these guys were starting to come up through the system. They were the film school generation is what they're called. But specifically, we can look at movies like The Wild Bunch and Easy Rider and all this other stuff. We can look and see when those were being made. It's when the studio system fell. When the studios were sued out of existence, not out of existence, but when they had their vertical integration sued out of them by the United States. You can go look this up. United States versus Paramount et al., I believe it was 1954, where they had to divest themselves of how many movies they could make and how they were being sent through the chain. They basically had to cut back on a lot of the movies that they made. Their distribution went out the window. Actors started to form more stronger unions, and so they weren't under that studio system contract, where you didn't have a writing department and an editing department and a director's stable and actors stable. And so you can go and track from about 1956 until about 1977. You see a lot of original cinema coming out of Hollywood, taking chances, trying something different, trying something new, trying to figure out a way that they can compete with television, which was knocking their block off in the 1950s. And then in the 1960s, you had the decline as more people started to move out of city centers and out into the suburbs. And so you saw the rise of malls and still trying to compete with television. And then we have the VCR being introduced. And so people are, why do I need to go to the movies? Cable also kicking an impact into the movies. So studios were taking risks and they were trying something different. And we did get some very, very different movies than what we see today. Now, I'm not saying that the movies of the 60s and the 70s were better, but if you look at the time when the studios were really trying to see what really worked, and they weren't worried about a lot of sequels, you can look at between 1955 and 1977 when the studios were taking their biggest risks. And also that's the time when Martin Scorsese was coming up through cinema. And why 1970? So 1955 is where I say is where this starts. And that's because the studio system and vertical integration was removed. And the reason why I say it stops at 1977 is because right around 1977, we get Star Wars. We get Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom in Raiders of the Lost Ark in 1980. We start to see Poltergeist, Poltergeist 2, Poltergeist 3. We start to see The Exorcist, Exorcist 2, etc. All those things start right around there where the studios feel like we're safe. We're just going to continue to pump out things that we feel are a sure bet. Jaws 1, Jaws 2, Jaws 3, Jaws 4. And that's pretty much how the studios have run since then. Every horror movie franchise, every fantasy franchise, every action franchise. Disney doesn't do anything new and original. They do everything that is safe. And that leads to mass consumption, right? Because show business is business. And they wanted to produce the mass consumption stuff. There is a market for small independent films. Don't get me wrong. I was just thinking about Dope the other day. Dope is a fantastic movie. But they don't take risks. Studios don't take risks. And if you think about Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, that was Sony taking a big risk. And they didn't know if it was going to pay off for them. You have a person of color. You have Miles Morales as Spider-Man. You have a schlubby Peter Parker. You're doing it in a cartoon. You're doing it as a cartoon, and you're doing it in a way that is artistically very different than traditional animation. As Miles Morales moves from an unsure hero to a total hero, he moves from the animating on the 2s to animating onto the 30 frames per second or the 24 frames per second, etc. And that is artistic. That is something that took a long time for them to figure out that look and to figure out the subtle meaning of that film. And so when I look at Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, I look at something and I say, this is art. This is a film. This is cinema. This is something that is not just a movie to be consumed by, in mass quantities. This is something that needs to be held up to the light and said, look, this is what cinema can be. This is how you can use the medium to tell a story in a super, super effective way. Now, I'm not dismissing Fast and the Furious 8. I'm not dismissing the Jumanji Part 2 movie. I certainly don't want to dismiss, the hundreds of Herbie the Love Bug movies that we got. But they're there to make money. They're there to say, hey, everybody, here's that thing that you're familiar with. Come and sit down and watch it. And so when it was very surprising when Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse came out that Sony did not immediately say we are going into production for the sequel. This movie has been out now for over a year, right? Hasn't it been out for over a year? Maybe it's only been 6 months. It seems like it's been over a year. No, it's been over a year since that movie's been out. And now they've just announced that, hey, we're going to proceed and we're going to get a release date and we're going to start moving forward with this. And so I'm very excited that they are taking that and saying, you know what, maybe we can do something more with this. But the announcement of Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse is also very, very scary for that number 2 movie. Because they did spend so much time, effort, and energy putting that first one together that they're going to have to come up with something totally different as far as the art side in order to impress everyone with Spider-Man 2, Into the Spider-Verse 2. They're also going to have to come up with a brilliant story. And so I'm just wondering, how can they make... And again, just go back and look at the technical aspects of Into the Spider-Verse. And look at and see how the subtle, casual influences that are helping to push that story forward make that movie art. And now let's try to reproduce art. Now let's see what Andy Warhol has to... I mean, Andy Warhol's dead, but let's see what Andy Warhol has to say about generating pop culture and cranking that out. So on the one hand, I said on this week on the Major Spoilers podcast, I was probably going to stop talking about Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse 2 because I didn't want to overhype myself for that April 8th, 2022 release date. But at the same time, I can't stop talking about it and can't stop thinking about it. Let me scroll back up and see what some of you are thinking there. So I'm super, super excited about Spider-Man. It's so great. Okay. Hey, Spoilerites. Okay, get into the Discord. So some of you are already into the Discord. Omega Astris is there. Marshall is there. Mark Smith is there. Okay, so people are doing hi. Can you finally see? Okay, some people are here finally. Is this your first time to see Finally Friday live? Well, welcome aboard. All of you people who are here to see this live. And we want to grow this. We want to see more people come in live. We obviously want to grow the Twitch channel. And if you haven't already subscribed to this channel and turned on notifications, I'm going to ask that you at least turn notifications on for this channel because I tried something yesterday that some of you seem pretty interested in. You can go into, there's the video replay is here if you want to go check that out. But yesterday, I did a live stream from my car. I've got about 30 minutes on any given day where I'm just sitting in a parking lot waiting for the oldest boy to come out of middle school, the boy to come out of middle school so we can come home. And so I'm thinking on those days, oh, thank you, the Grizzly 53. So I'm thinking on the days where I'm just sitting in the parking lot for 30 minutes, providing I have something interesting to say, kind of like this discussion right here. I'm going to go and start doing some live streaming on, and what did we decide? It's not Car Talk. It's not Major Spoilers Car Talk. because I think some people came in actually thinking we were going to talk about how to fix your gremlin. But it's going to be major spoilers from the car, right? I think that's what it is, from the car. And so you want to be looking for those. It's going to be a variety of different topics. It's not going to be necessarily comic book talk, although it might be if there's some big issue that's come up. So Malone says, I think they can make more of that good stuff. I don't think they're going to invent anything new. If they do, I'll be super surprised. And that's what I'm hoping. I'm hoping that they really say, what can we do that's new? Because unfortunately, that is the problem with the sequels. You've already figured out that there's a big giant shark and it's man versus nature. We've already seen those jump scares. We already know what Freddy Krueger is going to do. We already know what Jason's going to do. We already know what blah, 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 blah. We already know what Luke Skywalker is going to do. We already know what Darth Vader is going to do. So how are you going to do it differently? How are you going to tell us a story that's different? And that's one of the unique things that we've talked about on Major Spoilers, the podcast, for a long time, is that how the comic book movie is not a genre. It is simply the type of story that's being told through the vehicle. Winter Soldier, for example, is a Cold War story. The first Captain America is a World War II story. The first Avengers movie is your big team-up action flick. You've got stuff that falls into a number of different genres. You've got the romantic comedy one. It essentially was what Ant-Man is. Thor Ragnarok. I think you could say action comedy. How do you fix your gremlin? You go and you put it into the trash compactor. And that will fix it. Could they try to do something unique with the tech that's available? The thing is, if they already have a story written, that's great, because I heard the Japanese Spider-Man is going to be in this movie. But, you know, the clock is now ticking. So unless they've been spending this last year coming up with a solid story that they could pitch to Sony and say, look, we can make this work again. Here's a unique story. If they haven't already started looking at ways to make this work, then yeah, I don't know if they've got anything new on the technological front to do that. I mean, even just the shading of that movie, how they colored everything, so fundamentally important to the way that movie is done. The little line strokes and the shading and the hatching on everything. But that being said, technology in animation is changing at the blink of an eye. The new After Effects was announced. The 2022 version of, it's the entire Adobe suite. Got an update yesterday. They do major updates supposedly 3 to 4 times a year. But this one is a major update for 2020. And there's so much stuff that I could have been playing with. I don't think I'm supposed to say I'm part of the beta team. But there's so much that has been added into these programs that is light years ahead of where we were 4 or 5 years ago. And a place to kind of get an idea of what's happening next or what could happen next in terms of animation, both 3D, traditional animation, special effects, etc., is to look at SIGGRAPH. SIGGRAPH. GRAFPH, yes. No, not F, just PH. SIGGRAPH. It's the annual, I forget what the acronym is. Somebody will post it in there. And then you can see what all the new technological advances are going to be. Adobe, several years ago at Adobe Max, which is what was going on this week, which is why Adobe updated all their products. Several years ago, they showed this great way that you can go in and totally just sample somebody's voice and create something that sounds so believable. You could actually take, I joke about having a Matthew soundboard, but literally if Adobe would ever release this thing, the problem is it's so dangerous because you can fake somebody's voice even better than the deepfake stuff. But literally, I joke about the Matthew soundboard, but I have literally thousands of hours of Matthew talking that I could squeeze through this system and have a Matthew sample that if Matthew wasn't around and he wanted to submit his writing, he could send me the writing, run it through this Adobe application, which again isn't available, and you would not be able to tell whether he was on the show or not. So there's amazing stuff that's going on in the world right now. Question from the chat. Kevin11 asks, how did you get your start into knowing animation and film stuff? Well, started when I was a wee lad of about 3 years old, when my dad took me to go see Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs in the theater. And I've always been interested in doing film and video production. That's why I went to school. I talk a lot about Raiders of the Lost Ark and how much of an influence that has been in my life. And so I went to college to learn film production. They didn't have film because film was being phased out and everything was moving to video. And the department that I was in had a brand new product from a company in Topeka, Kansas called NewTek, the NewTek Video Toaster. And the NewTek Video Toaster was cool because it was essentially what OBS and all these other things that are out there are doing now. It was in a box, and this was in 1988. And our school had one. I think we were one of the first schools to have one. A couple of our graduates had gone to work for NewTek. Wesley Crusher, Will Wheaton was working at NewTek at the time. And it was a production in a box. You connect your cameras, and you could do all your switching. You could create all your graphics that you needed. It was wonderful. But the thing that amazed me the most was the fact that it had 3D animation in it. It was probably the thing that got everybody, I don't know about everybody, it certainly got me excited. And so instead of going home for the holidays, and I still think this is true for everybody. I mean, tutorials on the internet are great. I made my living writing tutorials on After Effects and Photoshop and video and all that stuff. I made my early living doing that. But the best learning material is to sit down with the manual and just learn. And just work through it and find out what works and what doesn't work. And so instead of going home for the holidays, that's what I would do. I would go into the department, essentially lock myself in for the holidays, and I would just build 3D things. Spaceships, planets, statues, all sorts of stuff. And then I would animate it. And of course, back then we didn't have I think it was like a $500, and back in 1989, 1991, $500 was a lot. But we didn't have the module that would control the videotape player. So in order to get the animation out of the NewTek Video Toaster and onto tape, you had to lay that tape, you had to lay those frames down one frame at a time. And so I would literally sit there and change my edit points by one endpoint each time, lay it to tape, play it back, set a new endpoint, play it back, and just repeat this process for hours and hope that nobody came in to disturb me because it took a lot of concentration. And of course, back then, rendering something could take hours or days to render. When I moved to Atlanta and was doing some freelance animation stuff, this one guy wanted a sailing ship across the water thing. And again, it wasn't anything fancy. It was 1995. But because he wanted the reflections in the water and the ray tracing, that thing literally took a month to render a 10-second animation close. The client was happy. It did take a long time to do, though. So that's kind of where I got my start. And so I did a lot of, and then I was writing for a company called Digital Media Net from about 96 to 2008, 9, something like that. And so a lot of the people who were doing at the time Star Wars fan films, who were doing After Effects work, were probably learning from the tutorials that I wrote. Now I have, the students have surpassed the master, so to speak. So now I'm going back and learning from them. It's really great. Yeah, SIGGRAPH, SIGGRAPH.org. So I hope that answers your question. Love Blade Runner 2049 in part because it was a sequel, but mostly its name. You don't see that very often these days. Truly new stuff that will be made once a decade at most. Sony is not exactly Studio Ghibli, or something that can crank out all-time classic animation after another by sheer talent and decades of experience. Well, I mean, Disney isn't that either, right? They had a breakthrough with Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, also with Bambi. One could argue with Fantasia. It was a brilliant breakthrough in technology and animation. It flopped in the theaters. And then you had the Nine Old Men, these people that became the classically trained, or what we know as the classically trained animators, who worked through the 20s, the 30s, the 40s, the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, into after Walt's death, and into their own deaths. And you see a lot of repetition. You see a lot of the same thing, especially after Disney had died. You see the animation house really just fall into disrepair. And you had a lot of very forgetful movies, especially animated movies coming out of Disney at that time. But, they continue to profit off things they own. How many Dumbo sequels have we had? How many Aladdin sequels have we had? So a couple of things you should watch. If you're into the history of Disney, a couple of things. And this will get you up to speed on kind of it'll kind of give you a... So one thing that I always like to say is, if you don't study history, you're doomed to repeat history. So if you kind of want to see where Disney is at, and maybe where they potentially are going if they're not paying attention, there's 3 things that you should read, or 3 things you should investigate. First is a book called Storming the Magic Kingdom. I don't know if you can find this, but this is a book that talks about how Disney was almost broken up by investment people in the mid-'80s, and how a last-minute save saved the company. Otherwise, it would have been broken up into an animation area, a television area, a movie area, and the theme parks would have been sold off to highest bidders, that kind of thing. So that's number 1. The other thing that you should watch, which I think is very, very cute, is Stan and Ollie. No, not Stan and Ollie. Frank and Ollie. Frank and Ollie. It is a documentary about at the time, the last living of the 9 old men of the Disney Studios, and it talks about their history. And that one's very nice because you see how their friendship, I mean, these 2 old guys, they were such good friends at Disney that they ended up moving in next door to each other. It's a very, very cute movie. Then there is also Waking Sleeping Beauty, which talks about how Disney in the 80s, Black Cauldron and all that stuff was really at a low point for the studios, again, right around the same time that Storming the Magic Kingdom was going on. And then how The Little Mermaid, Aladdin, The Lion King, Beauty and the Beast, how all that just really caused that resurgence for Disney. So you watch those 3. And then if you want a better perspective on Disney the person, you need to watch the Ken Burns American Experience. I think it was Ken Burns. It was definitely the American Experience on PBS that looks at Walt Disney the person. And you'll find out a lot of stuff about Disney that might make you go, ooh, boy, didn't know that. Let's see. I remember Video Toaster. Yeah, Kiki Stockhammer. She's still there. She left the company for a while. A bunch of them left the company. It's really interesting, but now she's back and she's still working for them. At one point, they were in Topeka, Kansas, not too, just down the road from where I was going to school. And then they moved to San Antonio, I want to say, in Texas. I don't know where they're at now. They may still be in San Antonio. And then at that point, one of my good friends when I was working in California, who I also ended up working with, he ended up working for NewTek. So we had a lot of stuff in common there. Jupiter Ascending. Oh, boy. Babylon 5, you mentioned Matuba. Matuba. Oh, God, I played trumpet. But Babylon 5 was the first television series that used the Video Toaster exclusively to do all the special effects stuff, all the animated stuff, the spaceships, all that. I've never seen anything as good looking as Akira or Spirited Away, and those are hand-drawn. One soon 40, another 20 years ago. Spirited Away is good. It's not my favorite Studio Ghibli film. Akira definitely is one of my favorite anime. We should do another top 5 on anime pretty soon. Let's see. Could use the Major Spoilers Amazon link. There you go. Just go to majorspoilers.com and click on that Amazon link and look for those stories. So is it a good idea that no one sees Still Great? I don't understand the question, J. Michael T. So copyright law is, we don't have enough time to go into copyright law. And we don't have enough time to go into copyright extension. But the thing that is amazing that I will say right now is a lot of the Disney stuff, the early Mickey Mouse stuff, is basically ready to go into public domain. Mickey Mouse is ready to go into public domain. Like this year, 2019, when it hit January, some of you may remember the flood of music and film and other stuff that went into public domain because the copyright duration had expired. And Mickey Mouse, I believe, is set to go into public domain in the next, 2 or 3 years, I want to say. And yet I hear nothing coming out of Washington, and I hear nothing coming out of Disney about extending that copyright duration even longer. And so, yeah, it's going to be very interesting. I think probably Disney is waiting to see what 2020 election will be, and then once everything calms down in Washington, if it ever does calm down in Washington, I think we will suddenly see Disney start to make the big push about, well, here's why copyright is important and why we need to protect our IP. Now, don't forget, trademark is different than copyright. Trademark laws are very much different than copyright, so maybe Disney doesn't care if some of their stuff goes into public domain, because they can still own a trademark on Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. They can still own a trademark on Mickey Mouse and those specific designs. So maybe they're not worried about that. But that's going to be the next big thing is that copyright push to move things further on down the road. Yeah, and so, yeah, Disney, I mean, I would think some of the early silent Disney stuff, the Merry Melodies stuff, is pretty original, although it's not interesting. But again, animation was new, so seeing a tree jump up and down or seeing the devil dance around or skeletons dance around on a loop probably was very fascinating, and to see it all sync to music was even more enjoyable. But you're right, Disney, when it comes to feature films, has always... Disney made their money... Again, we don't have time. We're almost out of time here. Disney made its money off of public domain works. And in the cases where they didn't have the rights to those works or something wasn't in the public domain, they bought it. Right? Pixar is a good example of somebody who I think comes up with a lot of original content. But we'll see. But in the early days of Disney, no. All that stuff was based off other works and other things. Yes, you did make it. Congratulations, Marshall. You made it for the last 2 minutes of the show. I didn't even get to the, this is what I'm grumpy about today. Maybe I'll talk about that next week when I do the From the Car Talk. Yes, but we are glad you made it, Marshall. I hope you guys found this interesting. I really came in to kind of split the show half and half between me ranting about, or raving about Spider-Man, and then ranting about people who don't know how to do their jobs. And I think the problem that we have in society today, and the reason why people are so angry at each other, and the reason why we have so many idiots in the world, is because people lack two things: common sense and common courtesy. But maybe we can talk about that more next week. Look for the major spoilers from the Car Talk. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel. Kevin, you want to roll that beautiful bean footage again? And make sure you turn on the notifications, because it's going to be kind of random. I'm going to try to figure out a schedule that works. Like if, Wednesdays I think will work. Thursdays might work. Actually, yeah. So maybe it'll be like, I don't know, Monday. I don't know. I'm going to have to figure out what the schedule is. But make sure that you do those things so you get the notification of when I go live from the car. And it's interesting because it's not as pretty as all this. You're not going to get I guess the chat does show up. But you're not going to get those pretty links up at the top of majorspoilers.com, or checking out our Twitter feed at Major Spoilers, or, again, there's our Twitch channel. But hey, don't forget our Patreon page, patreon.com/majorspoilers, where you can help out this show and everything that we do at Major Spoilers. You can also check out our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Major Spoilers Video. And of course, we're on Facebook for now with Major Spoilers. If you can, please, a couple of bucks a month certainly helps us out over at patreon.com/Major Spoilers. And I think I was going to talk about how much I enjoy my favorite tonic water. This is not an endorsement. But if Fever Tree wants to endorse this show, or wants to get some paid advertising on this show, I really enjoy the Fever Tree tonic water. It is so good. Put a little lime juice in there. I get my daily dose of quinine. I'm not drinking gin today because the boy has a dance and I need to drive him to a dance later, and you don't want to drink and drive. That's bad. Overheard at the taco truck yesterday, though. Two guys coming up to each other. Hey, what time did you get off work today? Oh, I got off a half hour ago, but I needed to drink a couple beers before I came over to the taco truck. And I was just thinking to myself, oh, Lord. Oh, Lord. But I do like the Fever Tree tonic water. I like the Hendrick's Gin. I don't know if you guys have a better tonic water than Fever Tree. I'd like to know. I hope it's not that Q, whatever it is, the Q tonic water. That stuff tastes like somebody threw up. A cat threw up in your cereal. That's what it tastes like. I can't put gin in it. I can't put gin in my drink. So this has just tonic water, or just the tonic water with a little bit of lime juice in it. Tastes good. Mmm. Yeah, and if I do drink, I usually only drink in a glass this size, maybe 2 shots of gin. I've not tried the ginger beer because I'm not a big fan of ginger. But yeah, everybody talks about their ginger beer is really, really good. White Claw. I'm not a fan of those weird flavored drinks. I'm not a fan of mango. I don't like mango. I think that's the only one that I've seen at our store is mango. Maybe I'll try that on Saturday if I don't have anything to do on Saturday. We do have a game stream tomorrow. We decided not to go to Nebraska this weekend for a karate tournament. So we'll have the game stream maybe tomorrow afternoon. I think tomorrow afternoon we'll try to hit it around 3 o'clock p.m. Central Time. If you're around, I really haven't figured out a good time. It seems for you guys, 3 o'clock in the afternoon is the best time. Even though maybe for me, 8 o'clock at night is the best time. I don't know. We'll try 3 o'clock tomorrow and see what kind of turnout we have. It's going to be right here on the Twitch channel. Tomorrow, I guarantee you, we are back to Red Dead Redemption 2. It's been gone too long. I miss it. No Man's Sky was fun. Outer Worlds was fun. But man, I do miss Red Dead Redemption 2. And so I'm going to get back to playing that tomorrow, right here on this stream. Oh, and next week, maybe next week, I will maybe do this show live from the rebuilt, recovered, rebeautified Nerd Room of Doom. You guys have a great week. Be wonderful to each other. Be nice to other people. Be nice to strangers. Be nice to dumb people. Take care of yourself. Do good, be good. And we will see you next time when it's finally Friday. Yeah, if you're still hanging out and you are a patron, I have put a calendar of events that you guys can subscribe to, a Google Calendar that shows when we're doing things. And also there at the bottom of if you're on the Twitch page still, there is a update of when we stream. I'll be updating that soon. And if you're over on Discord, I put out a thing that says, hey, here's what we're streaming this week. So what are you waiting for? Get over to the Discord there, Eric and Estelle and Eva and Farron and Garth and Gary and Jacob and James and Jackie, Jessica, both of yous. All those Johns. Kelly and Ken and Kevin. Laurel. I heard Yanni, but maybe it's Laurel. Mario and Mark. Nick and Noah and Paul and Peter. Richard, Rick, Ryan. Oh, Ryan Sands. You guys know him. Yeah, if you guys watch that show, The Runaways, you know Ryan Sands. Watson is here. Take care, everybody.